Welcome back to another episode of Code Symphony, Unraveling the Code Mysteries. I am your host Burhanuddin, and today we are diving into the world of CSS layout systems. More specifically, we are breaking down ultimate battle between CSS Grid and Flexbox, two champions of layout design that, while often used interchangeably, have their distinct strengths, applications, and use cases. Whether you are a seasoned developer or just starting out your web development journey, understanding how to choose between Grid and Flexbox can make all the difference when crafting a responsive and flexible design. Let's explore which one suits your need depending on your project goals. Flexbox, a short form for Flexible Box Layout, revolutionized the way we approached layout design. Before Flexbox, creating a flexible and responsive designs involved a lot of hacks and unnecessary complexities, especially when dealing with vertical alignment or dynamically resizing elements. Flexbox is one-dimensional. This means it primarily concerns with laying items out in single directions, either as rows or columns. It shines in use cases like navigation bars, buttons aligned horizontally, or centering elements. Flexbox makes tasks like distributing space between items and handling responsive resizing a breeze. For example, let's say you want to align navigation items in a menu. What you can do is simply just say the container as display flex and then justify content as space between. In just a few lines of code, you can distribute items evenly across the container. Magic, right? Well, Flexbox can handle more than that. Vertical centering, equal height columns, and wrapping are all well within Flexbox domain. But is it always the right tool? That brings us to CSS Grid. CSS Grid introduced a new level of sophistication to web design, allowing for two-dimensional layout. Unlike Flexbox, which is restricted to aligning items in one axis at a time, Grid handles both rows and columns. This means you can create complex layout with just a few lines of CSS, making Grid ideal for full-page layouts or designs where elements need to span multiple rows and columns. Let's look at a quick example. We need to define a grid with 3 columns and 2 rows, with all columns having equal widths and rows having fixed height. You can then place child elements precisely where you want them in the grid. To do that, you just need to define the container as display grid and define the grid template columns and grid template rows property. Need to have one element span across 2 rows? No problem. Grid handles it seamlessly. With the grid column property, we can do this very easily. Grid's power lies in its ability to give you pixel perfect control over both axes, making it a go-to for more complex layouts. So, when should we opt for Flexbox or a grid, or vice versa? For one-dimensional layouts like navigation bar or row of buttons, Flexbox is best bet. Its strength lies in aligning element within a single axis and distributing space evenly. For complex two-dimensional layouts, CSS Grid reigns supreme. If you need to build a full web page structure or design where elements are aligned into both rows and columns, Grid provides you the control you need. But here's the thing, they are not mutually exclusive. In fact, a combination of both can lead to a best result. For example, you can use Grid for overall page layout and Flexbox within smaller components like navigation bars and card layouts. Now that you understand the differences and applications of Grid and Flexbox, it's time to talk about some common mistakes developers make. First one, overcomplicating layouts. Sometimes a simple layout only needs a Flexbox, but developers reach for Grid out of habit. Assess the layout needs before jumping into either one. Second, not using Grid Gap or Flex Gap. These are built-in ways to create spacing between elements, but many developers still use padding or margin hacks. Use these properties for cleaner code. Third, forgetting the browser compatibility. While both Grid and Flexbox are supported in modern browsers, always test across different browsers to ensure compatibility. CSS Grid and Flexbox have transformed the way we approach web layouts, offering unparalleled flexibility and control. The key is to know when to use each one based on your design's need. Flexbox is ideal for simpler, one-dimensional layouts, while CSS Grid excels in complex, two-dimensional designs. And remember, sometimes the best solution involves using both. That's all for today's episode. I hope you now feel more confident about navigating the world of CSS Grid and Flexbox. As always, thank you for tuning into the Code Symphony, where we unravel the code mysteries, one episode at a time. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we dive into yet another essential web development topic. Until next time, happy coding.